C-Suite with Stamp Love. Let's talk about a podcast. And today we have on Kristin. Hi,
Well,
Kristin.
thanks.
How about yourself? Just keep going.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for having me on. I am a marriage and family therapist, and I have been really interested in resilience. What makes some people able to get through really difficult, challenging times, and make it seem like they're okay, and other people, have a really hard time. And I got really interested in resilience working with people with cancer in their families 20 years ago, because some people just seemed to be able to mobilize resources and kind of get their mindset where it was really scary and difficult, but they were okay. And then other people, things fell apart. And so I became really curious, what is it that those people know how to do? And can we learn from them and teach other people to be more resilient? So that took me on this 20-year path of trying to break resilience down into these bite-sized teachable skills. So you don't have to go read a whole book, and you don't have to spend tons of money on therapy or years in therapy. Even though I love therapy, I am a therapist, but that's kind of my mission, is to break resilience down into these bite-sized pieces that anyone can learn.
And how have you successfully been able to do that? It's a lot of research on resilience. So how were you able to condense it all?
Yeah. So, we actually ended up we did our own research. So way back almost 20 years ago, we had a researcher from the state of Colorado. I was living in Colorado at the time, we got to be part of this grant that was funded by the state of Colorado. And so it was just sort of an accident. They heard about us and they said, "Hey, can we study your program?" And I had a partner at the time, a business partner, and we just really liked how it went, because this researcher, he would interview us, he would interview the patients we were working with, he would interview their family members, and then he would go and compare what we were doing and finding with what other researchers in the field were doing. And so, it was nice. We had a professional who was leading the way, and we had it funded by the state, which was great. And then we ended up doing 4 studies with researchers from Duke. And I mean, it's a big deal, because you have to go raise the money for the research. I mean, like you said, it's a big deal to do that. And we just I guess we kind of got lucky, because once you have research that shows that you're actually doing something right, then other researchers and other research institutions want to work on your project, because they want to do research that helps people. And so then it's easier to get the funding for it. And so we got pretty lucky just being able to get these big grants, because what we were showing is that we were working with people who were dying of their cancer, and their cancer was progressing, but they were perceiving their quality of life as better, even though they were dying. And so that's pretty powerful stuff. It's like, just by talking to people about certain things and teaching them certain things, you can actually make them feel better, is fantastic.
And that emotion is producing change within there.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because how, like, if you feel really low, you don't have access to constructive thoughts, or problem solving your own life, or even like behaving differently, because all those things they're all kind of spiraling together. You're either spiraling up and like your emotions and your thoughts or your behavior, or you're spiraling down. Yeah. So it was really exciting for us to be able to help people. The problem for us back then was that we were doing it the traditional counseling way, right? So you have someone like me, one-on-one, in a room with you, which is not scalable. We were working at these great hospitals, but you can't, how many people can you help when you're, one therapist or social worker at a time? So then we went and actually built an whole online platform. And this was 15 years ago. This is way before COVID. And now everyone's used to Zoom, but we were doing this not through Zoom, with another technology, a long time ago. And it was really before its time. And unfortunately, it didn't actually succeed, that iteration, because people were kind of like, wait, you want me to come online and take an hour-long class in resilience? What are you talking about? So people did it, And it was actually interesting. It was actually more powerful. The curriculum worked better in these small online groups than it did in one-on-one, but we just couldn't get enough people to get that made sense, to do that.
I think when you're talking about therapy and programs and getting active involvement, it's always challenging. And when you're talking about healing, people are like, healing, there's nothing wrong with me. And that becomes the challenging part. But yours is connected to it's connected to cancer. So if you have cancer, you have cancer, and it's like a more solid thing for people to be able to hold on to than an emotional concern like depression or something like that, it seems like. So
that's a good point. But it still was one of those things of like, yeah, I want to feel better emotionally, but it still feels like this intangible, like I got too much else to do right now, and so it didn't necessarily get people to come online. And now I'm still happy to work with people with cancer, but I don't focus on that anymore. It's just resilience. And my passion is really kids and teens and young adults and helping parents raise resilient kids. Because I feel like if you can teach these skills early, you're saving people a lifetime of emotional pain. We should teach it in schools. I just quite haven't figured out how to get it in schools.
So I'm looking at your office and I see the Buddha behind you. So how much of your program has to deal with like yoga and meditation and things of that nature?
So can you really see it? It's a frog. It's a meditating frog.
I couldn't.
I should fix the height of this thing. Yeah, I've had that for so long. Someone gave it to me because I love that you asked that question, because I think that you cannot just work cognitively. You can't just work with people's minds, because people who have gone to therapy forever and like they know, for example, that they always choose emotionally unavailable partners. But just because they know it doesn't mean they're not going to go do it again.
Right.
Like your mind is not always your friend. And so I believe really strongly in accessing what I call your inner wisdom. You could call it, like with kids, we talk about your gut feeling, or just like that instinct, that just inner knowing that you have. You can feel in your body, if you tune into it, that like this person feels safe, or they don't really feel trustworthy, or like this situation feels good, or no, this isn't really good for me, but we don't necessarily teach our kids how important that is. And so to me, those are all lumped into those other skills, which is aligning your mind and body. And so, using your breath, or using just like focusing on relaxing your body to quiet both your mind and your body. And when you do that, you hear your inner wisdom. So I try to teach that to everyone, and even if it's just little 3-minute mini meditations, you don't have to do something big. You don't have to turn the lights off. You don't have to listen to something weird. You can literally just, sit and close your eyes and picture yourself in a hammock, like somewhere that you love, in a peaceful place outside or by the ocean or by a lake, and just picture yourself there and just allow yourself to imagine rocking in a hammock for 30 seconds. You'll relax. And that's a pretty cool trick to be able to do anytime in your day.
Yes, it's proven that the alpha brain waves actually create some healing in your neurons, in your frontal lobe, and things of that nature, which apparently I have been researching. So, yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of meditation and breathing and yoga, regardless of whatever you think your holdup is with yoga. I think it's a great thing to get moving.
And I think it's interesting because I feel like yoga, sometimes people think it's religious, and it's not. It's just, but it's cool to actually, when you use your body, it's an easier way to get your mind to focus on something besides the like to-do list, And so it's like the reason that yoga is so great is because it's helping you use your body to just be present in the moment and not be thinking about other things. And so that, just doing that, aligning that and getting rid of some of the chatter, it calms your nervous system. And so it's really, the research on that There's so much research on the benefits of that. It's called the relaxation response. And if you can induce the relaxation response, you can undo all those things that happen in the stress response. And that's everything from your muscles and your heart and your breathing. I mean, pretty much your digestion. And, we tend nowadays to live in a state of fight or flight. And we were only supposed to do that back when we were cave people, when there was a saber-toothed tiger chasing us and we had to, run or climb a tree or whatever. But we tend to live with that level of stress, dumping all those hormones and everything into our bodies. And think about how many people don't get relief from that. A whole day goes by and they're hyper alert, especially if they've had some kind of trauma or they're living in a traumatic situation, and then they don't get enough sleep. So their minds and bodies don't get any break from all that, and it just takes a toll.
Yeah, I would love to know how many people in the world actually get enough sleep. Like, really.
I mean, do you know how much sleep is enough sleep? Because I am big into sleep. So I remember, well, you have kids too, but I remember when I had my first child, I was like, okay, this whole not getting enough sleep thing is going to really throw me for a loop. So I did a bunch of research on, just looking up other people's research on how much we really need. Do you know what the number is?
I'm thinking it's 12 hours, but I'm not sure.
Okay, it's not that much. It's 9. It's like most people say 7 to 8, but it's 9, which seems like a crazy amount of sleep. But I've tried it myself, like on vacation and stuff, just to see if my body ever gets a couple days to sleep as long as it wants. I need 9. I aim for 8 and I usually get 7. But I wonder, to answer your question, I wonder too, how many people get enough sleep? Because I think a lot of people believe that 5 or 6 hours of sleep is plenty.
And when you talk about sleep and you talk about, resilience and you talk about children, another question would be, or hypothesis would be, how much sleep do the resilient children, the children that are naturally resilient, get versus the ones that aren't naturally resilient? Because the brain is trained to heal itself.
You know what that reminds me of? I did some work with Navy SEALs, and one of the things that I learned from those guys is that they all have they have a lot of stuff going on in their brain, like just traumatic brain injuries and things like that. And it's from a variety of different things. But one of the most debilitating things for them is that they are typically up and on high alert at night. You think about like Navy SEAL missions, right? They're going to happen in the nighttime. So for all those years that they are on deployment, they are totally messed up. They're like sleeping in the day, sort of, and not in the nighttime. And that they had heard from, a number of different doctors and psychiatrists that if they could just get their sleep back regulated, it solved a ton of their emotional and like mental health problems. Isn't that interesting? It's like that big of a deal to not have enough sleep. So I think the kids who don't get enough sleep, then you're starting at such a lower level just to have the physical capacity to take a pause, think well, not panic, not get upset. It's such a detriment not to get enough sleep.
And when you talk about kids and you talk about kids and you talk about what's going on in the world today, and especially if you, of course, I'm African American. So you talk about African American kids and the oppression, and then you talk about just the fact that COVID sends you in such a panic. And you think about the babies being born and raised in the middle of this, and you're like, you can't go outside and play and just kind of play. You have to have a mask on, and you need this and you need that, and like there's a natural fear there that's supposed to be there. But what does that do to your overall health? That's a major concern right now. And the question going back to resilience is, how does that affect their resiliency? Like
I think it comes down to, we don't teach emotional intelligence or resilience typically, right? And so we don't teach people, like one of the biggest parts of resilience, I think, is learning to look at what you can control. So when so much is outside of you, And like right now in the pandemic, there are so many things, very scary things outside of our control. Well, one big resilient skill is to look at, well, okay, so what can I control? And what is something I can actually do to take care of myself, either mentally, emotionally, or physically, or both? And there are things we can do even when we're stuck in our house, but they're different for everyone. And so if parents can learn to have conversations like, okay, we're all stuck in this house together. What is one thing? Each of us gets to go around and say one thing that would make our experience stuck in this place together better. And, not everyone can get their needs met. Maybe someone has a need for peace and quiet and the other person has a need for loud music because that makes them feel better. So those two things are in conflict. But if you have conversations and you try, maybe you can schedule it so that the need for the peace and quiet is different, a different time of day. But again, they're simple conversations that anyone can have, but they're not like, we don't think this way because we don't teach people to like ask kids, well, what is it that you need now? Like, is there any way we could get some physical exercise even in the house? Sounds lame, but maybe there's something, maybe there's some online video, something game that's dancing or whatever that, the point is like people have had to be super, super creative. But if you don't even know to be thinking of like, okay, resilience is about taking care of yourself. It's about like doing everything you can to take care of yourself. So what's going on mentally? Okay, so what do you need to be less afraid? Do you need information, or do you need people not to talk about it so much? Or do you need someone else to talk about it who seems calm, right? Like every kid's different. Everyone's different. But kids, when you ask them, they know what they need to a large extent. A lot of times we parents think we have to know everything. And so we're kind of guessing at how to take care of our kids, and we forget to ask them, like, what would be most helpful to you right now?
Right.
We can't always do it.
Right. And then some cultures, it's not allowed. And like, I don't agree with that. I haven't agreed with that. And the difference between like my daughter and my sons is I think that I was a teen parent. So raising my sons, it was more like, no, you do this, you do it this way, and you have to do it. And then with my daughter, it was more like, no, you kind of, you know what I mean? We can listen to you. And I remember going to the doctor with her, and she was she was uncomfortable with the doctor. She was uncomfortable with the doctor touching her during a physical. And we left. The doctor was like,
for you.
Crazy. No, I'm not crazy. I'm teaching her to honor her body.
You.
It's her body.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that experiences like that are needed, and we don't give kids those opportunities, and it's not traditional. And especially in the African American culture, it's not traditional, and we don't have these conversations honoring our kids' feelings and emotions. We don't even have the real conversation about honoring our own feelings and emotions. So we just need to create space for that. And I think that right there will kind of build resilience and lead to a place of healing for a lot of us.
Well, I think, you just totally hit the nail on the head, because emotions are there. It's like this taboo thing that, a lot of people just aren't comfortable talking about. It's like, it seems like it's weak, that we should just be able to whatever, or it's like feminine, or there are all these things about it, like emotions, that aren't, but here's the thing about resilience is like, which is why I always say like emotional intelligence is a key piece of resilience. So if resilience is about, okay, so the way I define resilience, it's not just getting through something really challenging, kind of white knuckling and persevering and getting to the other side. Resilience for me is that you can use really challenging situations to learn about yourself and come out the other side actually feeling like a better, stronger, happier version of yourself. So if that's the case, one of the biggest things you have to learn about yourself in order to feel better is what causes your emotions. What causes your emotions? And then what can you do about your emotions? Because how else are you going to feel better if you're not taking control of responding to your emotions? And so emotional intelligence at its most basic level, emotions don't just happen. There are thoughts behind them, which is why, like, let's say you and I are exactly the same in every single way, and we both lose our jobs. But if you have the attitude, you know what, I didn't really like that job anyway, I actually have a bunch of skills that I'm really interested in using, I'm going to go out and find something better, you're obviously going to feel different emotionally than if I think, oh my God, I'm never going to find another job, my kids are going to starve. Right? So it sounds really simple, but the truth is, when people realize that if you can just listen to your emotions instead of pretending like you don't have them or they're not important, you can find out that, like, oh, this is this cluster of things that's going on in my head. And some of them are real. Some of them are me just being like blowing things out of proportion. Some of them aren't even true. But either way, there are there are action steps I can actually take to dealing with this stuff and moving forward. And the other end of that spectrum is when you realize that these thoughts cause these emotions, which then cause me to behave in this way. So when I get stressed, I withdraw, or when I get stressed, I get really irritable and push everyone away or snap at people, and now everyone's mad at me or whatever. It suddenly allows you to just take control more of what's going on inside your head so that you can choose your response instead of feeling like you're just swept away by your emotion.
Yeah, and that's the important to me. For me, I know that everybody is not the same, but for me, that's the importance of journaling. Being able to journal is just, it's like an emotional dump, and then you kind of can go back and you can affirm the truth and affirm the changes you want to make, or you can come up with action steps or however you want to do it. But journaling does that for me. I know that I have a son. I have an older son. My son is 23. So
I have one of those too. That's funny. We have two of the same age kids.
He will speak into a recorder, and that's how he deals with it, because it's just too, like, everything just comes out too fast for him. So there's so many different ways that you can use to just kind of work through your stuff, because we all have stuff. And I think for me, it's kind of, we need to normalize that we all have stuff, because your emotions are not going anywhere. They're going to be there.
Well, I love that you're saying that, because what happens is when we keep it all in our heads, it's like so much. And then it's like little teeny things that are just kind of annoyances. They get lumped into this pool with like big stuff that is like really scary or really upsetting stuff, but you don't have any way. It's just all feels overwhelming. But if you can like speak it into something or write it down or talk to someone, you can start to realize like, okay, these are separate stressors. And there are action steps I can take to take care of myself around each one of these. And, you know, you may still be left with fear. You may still be left with sadness or anger, but there are going to be things you can do to feel better, and it will feel better. It may not be 100%, but it's going to move you in the right direction.
It will. And we put these words like fear and anxiety together, and we always give them such a bad place and such bad context over them. They don't have to be. Fear can be used for a healthy thing. It can, and so can anxiety, and we give it too much credit to the words the negative and no credit towards the positive. Change is possible on all levels, and we don't give space for that. And that's another thing, that everything doesn't have to be bad or good. Things can be in between. And you can make the not so good, and the not so bad if you do the wrong things. And we have power to change. And that's really what the healing process is about, and normalizing the fact that we have concerns and we have emotions, and that sometimes our emotions get difficult and they get confusing, and we have challenges that go throughout life. But being honest with yourself that we all have them. It doesn't matter. I know doctors that don't even practice anymore because of emotional situations. And I know people that were straight A students that didn't do well in life because of this and that. It's because they didn't have the emotional awareness and emotional intelligence and those things. And we need to normalize conversations such as this, and to make it normal and be real.
Totally.
Have it.
I mean, I just love that you're saying that, because you're right. Like, the fact that you're having a time in your life where everything feels overwhelming, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, or you're not smart enough or good enough or whatever. It just means everyone has those, but not everyone has the tools to get through them. But you're going to get the tools if you reach out, if you acknowledge and, get help or whatever, or even just to your own self. If you can say, okay, so this is something big, let's try to get through it. But, one of the things that reminds me of also is people do throw words like anxiety, for example, around. And I got to agree with you. I mean, there are lots of aspects of life that are going to cause anxiety, no matter how emotionally healthy you are. Anxiety can be motivating. We're not trying to get rid of all anxiety. And I think sometimes what happens is parents, when they start to think that their kids have anxiety and they start labeling it, and that it makes it worse. It makes, like, the kid thinks, oh no, there's something abnormal. Now they have anxiety about having anxiety. And then the parent has more anxiety, right? No, you see that spiral happen.
Yeah, you do see that spiral. And the thing about it is, if we normalize the fact that, okay, anxiety means something needs to change. That's what it means. That's really what it means. Something needs to change. If you have anxiety about something chasing you, then you need to move, because there's something after you. Like, that's what needs to change. And it's just that simple. It's just an opportunity to grow. That's it.
And I mean, that's resilience right there. Right. Is just using it as an opportunity to grow. Yeah.
Right.
All negative emotions are an opportunity to grow.
Right. And I think, like, even when we talk about depression is probably like a place that is kind of like stuck in between. And you need to, like, it needs to flow, and it's not able to flow. And it's the ability not to be able to flow that is causing the concerns. You're just not able to move it, and you're stuck. And that's what I think it is. But
yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I don't want to make it seem like, I definitely don't want to belittle, there are like clinical levels of depression and anxiety that, people really do need help. You know what I mean? Like, so debilitating that people can't leave their homes and that kind of a thing. And then I really do think, professional help, because it depends on what people think about medication, but there are treatments that can really help people, at least for a period of time, when, depression can feel like it is like something outside of you taking over your body. Yeah. It can feel like you're like an alien invasion in your body. That's more than just like, go think a productive thought, or, you know what I mean? It's like, people really, I definitely want to make, that like there is a time for really reaching out and getting professional help.
I mean, there is a time for really reaching out, but I think that when I say it, it's kind of to normalize that it's okay to reach out. It's totally okay to have this conversation. It's okay. There are people that will embrace you and understand you and build and make space for you and accept you regardless of what you're going through. Because guess what? We've all been through stuff. What I can guarantee you, that regardless of who you are walking past, they all have stuff. We all have stuff. And that's really what it's about. It's being able to deal and manage with our stuff, and creating spaces where everybody can deal and manage their stuff. And therapy is definitely a way that I support you dealing with your stuff. But we need to make these conversations normal, just normal conversations about feelings and emotions and what goes on the inside.
And what do you think? That reminds me of just this whole idea of, people being comfortable reaching out and accepting support, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people are just really reluctant to do, to reach out when they need help, or even accept it when it's offered. And that's one of the biggest factors in what makes someone resilient and another one not so resilient, is their support network. And a willingness to actually accept support. And, do you agree that that's something that, we have to kind of get people to change their mindset, that like we all need support sometimes, and it's, not a negative thing to accept support?
I agree. But I think that I think that that's a double-edged sword. I think people don't accept support because they just don't trust. And then some of them don't trust for reasons. Like it really makes sense that they don't trust. So that's another reason to kind of break down all these negative narratives that we have about who people are and how we show up in the world, and the hierarchy of who's who and who's better than, and like that right there. We need to break that down, because at the end of the day, guess what? We all go to the bathroom. We're all people. We all feel pain. We all have emotions. We all eat food. This is normal stuff. We all do normal stuff. And when I say normal stuff, I mean like day-to-day stuff. We go to sleep, we wake up. So accept a person for who they show up to being, not who you think they are, and the story that you make up in your head. And that would kind of heal some of the things that take place that make people not comfortable. But it comes with real conversations and honest conversations. And I know I was talking to a professor not too long ago, and like, she's a Caucasian woman from Arizona, and we got into this conversation about race. And if I was to work in biases, I probably wouldn't have said that her feelings were what they were. But when we had the conversation, it opens doors to be able to have a different understanding of her views. And that's the thing. The thing about it is, when we're not at a place where we can accept those conversations and have those real heart-to-heart conversations, we're not allowing the healing to take place. And that's the major thing. The major thing is we're not allowing the healing to take place. And it's impacting people to greater levels, severely greater levels. And it's causing health problems. It's causing financial problems. It's causing spiritual problems. And it's not needed. It's not needed. So,
I mean, yeah, what comes up for me... No, I mean, what comes up for me when you say that is just like human communication. It's an intimate thing, and it also requires that inner wisdom. Like, it requires, when you're standing in front of someone, can you feel into your own body and say, this person feels like someone worth connecting with? You know, I'm going to show up here and be real and try to reach that part of this other person, instead of, I feel like there's so much surface just stuff that happens where people don't try to be with each other, you know, in a real authentic way. But it's scary. It's vulnerable.
Right. And that's when the practice of mindfulness needs to be in schools all over. And we need to talk about how to regulate your body and your emotions. And we need to have honest conversations with the older generation, especially the ones that are probably going to block some of this because that is generational and it's just, we don't do it that way. We need to sit down and we need to really have real conversations on what can be done and how to heal, because there is not one of us that don't need some healing on some level. Like, regardless of what you're going through currently, there's probably some kind of situation that you've been through that is going to lead to that's led to another situation that kind of piles it up, and it's just a lie. And we can all heal from it, but we block our own blessings by our own biases, and that's what takes place. But we need to create more spaces where we can heal it and become whole people, because I don't know, I have this conversation often where I talk about the medical field. Like, so I started my journey as a CNA, but that was medical. And then I eventually graduated and I became a registered behavior technician. And that is supposed to be mental. So, but they all interconnect, like they all go together. So with that being said, there's not one part of the body that works by itself. I've never seen that throughout my whole journey. I've never seen that the brain just works with just the brain and the body just works with just the body. And it's the same thing, like my journey with my son. When you're talking about his educational journey was not just an educational journey. It was an educational and a mental health journey. And kids that don't have a place, that aren't healthy mentally, they can't learn education, because who really cares about the reading when I'm scared for my life? Like, I don't care to read the book. So those things, and having honest, real conversations about what's going on and creating spaces to heal. And that's kind of what Stamped Love is about, because we have conversations about all kinds of things.
Do you feel like the conversation about mental health in this country is going in the right direction, where more and more people are understanding how important it is and the stigma is lessening? Or do you feel like it's still a long way to go in terms of kind of the stigma about talking about mental health and emotions and all these things?
I think it's going in the right direction. I just kind of wanted to go faster. That's just me being impatient. Mental health has such a long way to go, but it also goes with some of the changes that's going on in the culture regardless, because I don't think you can do one without the other, to be honest. So that's just my opinion.
Like, will you say more about that? What do you mean by that? That sounds really interesting.
So I think that like the George Floyd situation opened the door, even though it was a sad situation, and I offer my condolences to his family and all that. But what took place when that happened is it opened more doors for people to have conversations about how race affects people's decision. So when that happens, and then you're on the other side, you're having a conversation about mental health, and you put the two together, you are allowing a space for healing if it's done in a healthy way. You are allowing the doors to be open. You're allowing to be able to have conversations. You're allowing to be able to understand that my anxiety and I can only show up as me. So I can only tell you about my journey, and that's what this is about. My anxiety as the mother of African-American boys is real. Yeah, my anxiety as the sister of African-American males is real. Like, those things, but it's more of a place to have those conversations, because there wasn't when I was younger, where there are now. So there's changes going on, and they're going on in different levels. And even when you talk about the educational system, I'm was reading a program, I think it's in West Virginia, and they were talking about how this program, I think it's called the hands-on program. I think it's called hands-on. But the program basically is connecting the trauma that takes place within the police system. And when police officers, they show up to children's homes, they are actually calling the school and be like, this kid had this and this happen, or had a traumatic situation. I don't think they're not giving details, but a traumatic situation. And, that's awareness to school that something may happen, like the child may have an outburst or whatever, and then it's allowing the community to be more supportive and wrap arms around that child more than anything else. And I thought that's a great plan for everybody, because in this community, they had a high concern with like heroin and drugs, but that's almost everywhere. So those things, and that's where your resilience comes in, because I don't think that we would have as many addicts self-medicating if we were more resilient.
Yeah, it's like, because I think you're right. It's like we don't like to feel bad. We want to reach for anything that's going to make us feel better. That's human nature, and we shouldn't feel that bad. But shoot. Oh, why? The freezing. I don't know. I'm so sorry.
It was getting good too.
All of a sudden, I see your face just sitting there. I'm like,
whatever. All right. Well, we're gonna just we can wrap. I don't know. We could wrap it up, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll just wrap it up because we might get another freeze.
Okay.
So you can come back with like a quick response, and I'll cut this part, but we'll come. This is gonna be. I don't usually do this much editing.
Sorry.
So we'll come back with a quick response and then like kind of wrap it up.
So what was the response to? Forgot.
You too. Okay.
I know we were talking about the West Virginia thing, but in particular, we were just talking about like maladaptive coping, like why do people choose heroin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess what I was really trying to say is just that when people we don't like to feel bad. I mean, it's human nature to reach for whatever will make us feel better. And if we don't teach our kids things that we can do without needing other people to change or money or any of these other things that we have within us all the time, and like how to reduce things down to an action step you can actually take that's in your control to take care of yourself. When we don't teach that, which like I said, it's not that hard to teach. I mean, I'm teaching it right now to 7-year-olds. And it's just, you can do it one little skill at a time, and you can do it by having people who aren't even trained in resilience teach it. Right now I have mentors who have no training, and they get an email from me, and they go in with their group of kids, because it's in these youth activity things, and they read a paragraph or two. It takes 30 seconds about what's the skill of the day. You know, the skill of the day is pay attention to how other people respond to you. You know, like there's an interesting skill. You might not change how you behave, but it's kind of interesting to know that if you just think you're shy, but you come across as aloof or stuck up or arrogant or whatever, that's not serving you. Anyway, these simple skills that you can read, and then you ask the kids a couple of questions, and the kids know a lot. Kids know a lot. They just haven't been told that what they know is a skill that can make them resilient. They just need to connect the dots between these obvious things that they know, like we talked about before, that feeling in your gut when something is a good thing to do or not such a good thing to do. That's a really important skill, but they don't get told that. They don't know that, you know? So anyway, I mean, I think that my mission and yours align, right? To like help get these tools to people so that they can feel better when life is really, really difficult.